Grand Master Taejoon Lee.
It's a legacy of loyalty. Before the Hwarang were created, the king who founded, King Chin-hung, was wise enough to direct the Buddhist priest. He sent his young pupil to ask what codes these warriors should live by. And it became the Hwarang Ogye, the 5 code of the Hwarang. First is loyalty to king. Second, loyalty to parents. Third is loyalty to friends. Fourth is don't retreat in battle. And the 5th is mercy or compassion in killing. The Greeks have the 4 loves, and it's love of God, love of family or parents, love of friends. Then the 4th is eros, love of the romantic love. See, we have the 4 loves, just like the Greeks, but we don't even have the 4th. Everything about loyalty is about self-sacrifice. It's about giving up of the self. See, there's nothing there about the self. So in our narcissistic culture today, that's why it all fails, because everything is centered around me.
Peace and blessings, soul family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. Sacred Sons is an organization dedicated to strengthening men's mental, physical, and spiritual health. And with that, we have one of the world's finest and most devoted martial artists. His name is Taejoon Lee. He is an 8th degree black sash, and he is a Grand Master of the art of Hwa Rang Do. Welcome, Grand Master Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. You are joining us from Luxembourg, where you live.
Yes. I used to be in LA, but I moved here 8 years ago. So now I reside here, and the weather is nothing like Los Angeles, but I made a home here, and I'm building also Hwa Rang Do Sanctuary, a live-in training center.
Beautiful. You had many schools in Southern California, and your journey originally began in Korea, where you were born.
I was born into a warrior family. My father is the founder of this martial art. He made it gained approval from President Park in 1960 and officially started the World Hwarang Do Association in Korea. And I was born in 1965, and I'm the oldest son. And I've been, basically training since birth, and immigrated to the United States in 1974 when I was 9.
Hwa Rang Do, it comes from an original warrior class, ancient warriors of Korea, the Hwarang Knights. Is that correct? Yeah. What do you know about the kind of the history even before your father, maybe from this lineage?
My father was one child among 7. He was the 4th son, and my grandfather. You have to understand they were raised during the Japanese occupation of Korea, before the Korean War, and then Japan tried to commit cultural genocide from 1910 to 1945. So at that time, my grandfather, fortunately, was educated in Japan, and he understood the value of martial arts training, and he trained in kendo and other Japanese arts himself. And so when he came back to Korea, we're actually from North Korea. My grandfather took my uncle and my father and took him to the local Buddhist priest, who was a hermit monk. And he happened to be gained knowledge of the Hwarang warriors, their combat skills, for 57 generations. And he trained my uncle and my father, and that's how it was passed down to them, and they became my father became the 58th generation bearer of the art. So the Hwarang warriors, its significance is that they were the first ones to unify the Korean peninsula for the first time in Korean history, about 600 AD. So before then, there were three kingdoms. And it was this band of warriors, which actually was the smallest kingdom of the three. And they were able to fight fiercely and conquer the entire peninsula. And they were actually very young teenagers,
Wow.
between the ages of 13 to 16 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, we don't really think about that, but yeah, it's amazing how much young men have transformed this world. 13 to 16-year-olds. And I know that, or I watched your documentary, and you received your first black belt at the age of 7. And as a child, you were, playing and rolling around with these Grand Masters.
So that's my unique experience is that I was basically, since birth, been raised basically to do one thing. Mm-hmm. And that is to become the heir of this art. And interestingly enough, my father wanted a guarantee. So he had me, and my next was my sister. Then he wanted another boy, but he wasn't fortunate. He got another daughter. My mother told me that he actually was not happy. He didn't come to the hospital, and he went out. And so he had the fourth child, and he was a boy. The point I'm making is that he was very strict, very loving when we were very young, but I was probably raised very differently than most of the people today.
Yeah, your father, Dr. Taejoon Lee, what an incredible man. He brought your family from Korea to the United States, seeking a better future, seeking prosperity. Did he open the first Hwa Rang Do gym in LA?
Yeah, what happened is my uncle, who's 1 year older than my father, they both trained together since they were like 4 or 5 years old. So they, basically in the summertime, my grandfather just gave them up to the Buddhist monk. When he passed away, his name is Hwa Rang Do, the hermit monk. He gave the title of Doju, which means owner of the art, owner of the way, to my father. So my father then became the 58th generation Hwarang. But my uncle first came to the United States before my father. So that was around, I think, 1970 or so.
Yeah.
So he opened the first school in actually Huntington Park. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that was not such a good area at the time, and I don't think still is.
Now, in Korea, they adopted Taekwondo as the national martial art, and that was the reason that they left. Is that partially true? Yeah,
that's one of the reasons. My father worked very hard to try to make a unified Korean martial art during the 60s, early 60s, and actually he received permission. He met President Park Jung-hee, who was basically the leader or president responsible in bringing Korea into the industrial age. You have to remember, after the Korean War, we were left desolate. We were probably like the third poorest country in the world. And it was through President Park, who was a general, and he was able to bring Korea into the industrial age. And my father met with him, gained permission to create a unified Korean martial art, and he did that. He tried that a couple of times, and obviously it didn't work out. After that failed, then the general who led the Vietnam War, General Choi, he then proposed the idea of creating Taekwondo, the way of hand and foot. And the reason why, and I say this now, and this is probably one of the reasons why, many, even Koreans culturally today, accept Taekwondo as a Korean art. But what angered my father, and also to myself now, is that is a remnant, what's left over from the Japanese imperialism. Because Japanese, what they inflicted on us, like as I said, was cultural genocide. So we couldn't speak the language. So my grandparents all speak Japanese. Mm-hmm. They're all passed away now, but that generation all spoke Japanese. We couldn't practice our arts, nothing like that. So of course, the martial arts was not trained. So they adopted basically karate, judo, and kendo were the three martial arts that was practiced in Korea. And so Taekwondo actually is a remnant of karate, or gongsudo, or tangsudo it's called in Korean, or gongsudo in the term karate do. Kara means empty, te hand. So empty hand in Korean, that's gongsudo, way of empty hand. Actually, that was the first name, gongsudo. And then that later became tangsudo. And Tang is actually referring to Tang Dynasty, China, way of Chinese hand. Mm. And then tried to modernize it and to adopt it as a Korean art, changed that to Taekwondo. And then that was adopted as 국기, or national sport. And, that it was a betrayal, to my father, to the Korean martial arts. So yes, that was one of the major reasons where my father left, because his idea was, right now we're talking about all these things with immigration and so forth.
Right.
But during that time, America was the land of milk and honey. It was, and still is, but definitely during the 60s and 70s globally, America was it, and what my father intended is that if he could bring Hwa Rang Do to America, the most powerful nation in the world, and establish Hwa Rang Do here and make it popular in the U.S., then surely that it would be received and welcomed back and reintegrated into Korea. That was his dream. That's what he wanted to do. Yeah. We actually tried that in 2004. And it's not so easy, very political. And Taekwondo is dominated, and has become so ingrained into Korea and it's in the government. It was very, very difficult.
Yeah. I love hearing the history because it gives an explanation for why your father was such a strict disciplinarian. This is not coming from a place of anger. This is coming from a place of honor. It's my outsider perspective. He's coming from a place of honoring his culture and his way. And therefore, you as a young man, as a child, I imagine you were raised under a strong hand from a strict disciplinarian.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, my father didn't like the children crying, and especially me. And I was a pretty sensitive boy. And I think I was like around 3 or 4 years old, maybe even 2, very young. And I was just crying, and wouldn't stop. And I don't know if you know Korea, but in the winter, it's distinct 4 seasons. And in the winter, it's very cold.
Snow packed up on the balcony?
Like up to my knees. And he put me in my underwear and he threw me out there. And he says, you come back in when you stop crying. So when he did that, I didn't come back in for a while, So he's kind of worried. So he told my mother, go see what he's doing and tell him to come in and apologize and And what my mother tells me is that when she went out to come and get me, that I told her, I said no, and I wouldn't go back in. So, I was raised very strictly, but, having, I guess, his DNA, I was very stubborn too.
Yeah. That's amazing that you refused to come back in from the cold. What did that do to your sensitivity as a young man?
That's like a loaded question, I was a very sensitive person. And that's, one of the reasons my father was kind of a little bit concerned, right? I was a bit emotional and so forth. But he always gave me challenges. So, for instance, he put me 1 year younger, into school. So I think, first grade is
about 6 years old, 6, 7.
6 or something, 6 or 7. So if first grade was 7, let's say, he put me in when I was 6. So I was 6 when everybody was 7. So everybody was a year older. Now at that age, that's a big difference.
Right.
Right. So I always had to fight my way with bigger, older kids all through school. All through my childhood, when we came to America, and of course, all the kids in America were much bigger too. When I first came here, that's one of the first things when I came to America, what I realized is everything is bigger.
Even the people.
Even the people, yeah, they were all bigger. And my father, his way, this is my father's way of teaching me how to get along in school. He'd say, okay, you pick the biggest guy on campus and in front of everybody, you punch him one time and knock him out and you have all the friends you want.
Did you ever do that? Did you put that into practice?
Yeah, that's basically what I did. But, of course, I didn't always knock them out in one punch. But that's what I, proceeded on doing. And because of that, they were all white, and interesting thing is my father, where we were, I don't know if you know, but we were in Downey, Norwalk, the area Downey. At that time it was all white. Mm-hmm. Right. When Koreans started to immigrate, as being Asians, they always look for the best neighborhoods for their children and in raising their family. So from Los Angeles, they kept on moving south. So when they started coming to Downey, then we moved again, and then we moved further south, and we moved to Garden Grove. Now Garden Grove, long time ago became the Koreatown, Orange County. But before, during that time in the 70s, there was no Asians there at all. It was all white. And we went there, and then the Koreans started coming in. So we moved again to Laguna Hills, South Orange County. So the reason I say this is because during the time, I was very upset, very angry about with my father, moving a lot, and moving a lot and going into all white neighborhoods. It was very difficult. I mean, of course, there's racism, and, kids are actually very mean, very cruel, and whatever is different, they pick on, right? Yeah. Whatever is. So I was the only Asian. And so I got picked on a lot. And so I fought a lot. During my childhood, I basically went to school to fight.
Wow.
It wasn't so much studying. But the thing is, I did study. I studied hard. And one of the reasons why I studied, it wasn't about, succeeding and going to college and doing all that. It was nothing like that. It was, I didn't want to get in trouble by my father. That's basically the single reason why I kept good grades. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah. It's like you had this respect and honor at home, and then you have this fight at school, and it's, I'm hearing that. I'm just imagining how challenging that really must have been.
It was very difficult. So I was very upset at my father for moving around a lot, and why he did that, and why he put me in that situation, and because I really, think about it, in that age, 13, 14, junior high school, right? And you're fighting all the time. It's not because you want to fight or you like to fight, but now, I knew many years before, but being an adult, I appreciate it. I understood. I understand now.
What is it that you understand? In a way, it's a rite of passage.
Oh yeah. If he didn't do that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And that's the difference, right? Of how I took his discipline and the way he forged me, my will and my resilience. And also how my brother took it, because my brother, unfortunately, he quit, he couldn't handle it. And there's different ways, raised the same way, but the different ways we take it. So I value and I appreciate, I understand that. And now I realize in our society, this is what I'm committed to today, right? And this is not for me, teaching, kicking, and punching. It's not a sport. It's not taekwondo. The value of what is the Hwarang, and why that's important. It is teaching the warrior way,
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that we're connecting here, in this podcast about, but it is understanding that and the value of that and how to live in our modern, contemporary culture, especially now, right?
Yes.
As a warrior in the 21st century, how do you do it? What does that mean? What does that entail?
Yeah. And what are some of the values or standards of the warrior way? What are some of the attributes that you see as time tested that really make a warrior, whether you're in a modern setting or when you're in combat?
There's like so many things to delve into here. It's not a simple answer. But one of the things that I can define is from our code. And, before the Hwarang were created, the king who founded, King Chin-hung, was wise enough to direct the Buddhist priest. He sent his two Hwarang young pupil to ask what codes these warriors should live by, and it became the 5 code, the Hwarang Ogye, the 5 code of the Hwarang, and it is basically first is loyalty to king. Second is filial piety, loyalty to parents. Third is loyalty to friends. Fourth is don't retreat. Don't retreat in battle. And the fifth is mercy, or compassion in killing.
Wow. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
Yes, that's
Woo!
right. That is exactly it, right? In essence, that now our mission statement, it starts with, we're a legacy of loyalty.
Wow.
It's a legacy of loyalty, and the way it is defined is so important and valuable. And see, it's first loyalty. It has to be in that order, you see?
Yes.
Loyalty to king, right? Then loyalty to parents. Then loyalty to friends. See, the Greeks have the four loves, right? And it's love of God.
Yeah.
Love of family or parents, right? Love of friends. Then the fourth is eros, love of the romantic love. See, it's the last. Though I keep telling people, for us, we have the three. See, we have the four loves, just like the Greeks, but we don't have the fourth.
No romantic love. It's the fourth is don't retreat.
Exactly. Don't retreat in battle. Never.
Wow.
So loyalty, see, that's like and why I feel that today, the idea of, see, everything about loyalty is about self-sacrifice.
Yes.
It's about giving up of the self. See, there's nothing there about the self. So in our narcissistic culture today, right, that's why it all fails. Because everything is centered around me, right? But the important thing, the cohesion, the cohesiveness of any society or any group requires you to sacrifice. It is the group above yourself. See, but the additional problem why I say, right, it has to be in that order. It is when in a secular world today, right? Now you question, well, see, who do you need to be loyal to, right? You say you're loyal to this and you say that, and it's subjective. So everybody claims value of moral superiority or hierarchy in their own interpretation. So there is no objective value and reference. So they can cry that they're loyal. They can cry that they're moral at the top of their lungs. And they can think that way. But when you don't have an objective reality to compare to, it fails. And this is the issue. And this is why fundamentally, this is why in Christianity, when the disciples asked Christ, what shall we do after? What shall we do? What are the commandments to live by? And he says, his two commandments, love your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
See, but what is so profound about that is the idea, love of God, meaning first you must love God. You must submit, everything to God. That is your objective reference. That is your eternal, never changing reference. Then when you have to first love God. God is love. You understand what love is, what sacrifice is. Then from there, you do the same then to everyone else. So it works. But without that hierarchy, and if you say just, be loyal, love everybody, then it's all subjective. There's no real value. It's just value. Morality then becomes as strong as the individual's self-belief and self-strength, persistence, and stubbornness, then it has no value. It has no value at all.
Yeah, I love that there is no law of self-love, because it's all about being in service to others. This is actually our highest form of love. It's not self-serving. It's actually being of service to others that creates harmony within a society, within a system. And what you're bringing through is actually building integrity through the love of God and through the love of parents and neighbor. Yeah, that's powerful.
Right? You have that love of God or king. Kings are ordained by God. So you have that. You have country or nation. Then under there in the citizenship, when it's a functioning proper government, then what's the other next is loyalty to parents. What does that mean? Well, it's the family structure. The family must be intact. And it is a strong family unit that disperses proper morality, proper ethics, and proper role models to the children. And they're the ones who are the educators, not the state. It's the parents who are the educators. Then with that, then you create a strong individual, right? The idea of love yourself is actually a ridiculous statement. I mean, how can you not love yourself? You live in yourself. You are yourself. How do you know anything other than yourself? Everything in the world, the universe, everything else. I tell people, in some ways, the entire universe exists because you exist. You close your eyes, everything disappears. You open it and it's there again. So you can say, oh yeah, the entire universe, I'm God. I created, and I say gone, and it's gone. And, you can take that kind of in narcissistic perspective, but that's not true, right? But the idea is that, of course, you can only see the world through your eyes, through your perception.
Yes, this is the I am. I exist, therefore I am, and it's I am, in the words of Christ, I am who am.
Yeah. Well, God's name is I am, I am. His name is,
yes.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am existence. I exist, so everything else exists. Yeah. And rightly so. So without him existing, then nothing exists, Yeah,
I love that you took the loyalty to your parents and really followed through on the path that your father set before you. When you went into college, I believe this is when you opened your first gym. Is that correct? And maybe more than one.
My first teaching was I started teaching when I was like 12, 13. I turned my garage into a studio. My father put some mats down and mirrors for me, and I taught my sister's friends. That's funny, right? I'm like 12, 13, and my sister's friends, the parents would come over to our house. They'd be having tea and coffee inside with my mom while I teach the kids, their kids. So that was my first experience in teaching, when I was 12, 13 years old. Then, when high school, when I moved into, when I went to high school, I opened a club in high school. And, think about, I was 16. I think I was sophomore, right? And I'm in an all white school. It was Laguna Hills High School, actually. And, 1,200 kids, not too big, but I was one of probably 2-3 Asians in the whole school again. And I knocked on the vice president's door every day to see if I can open a club. And he's like, he's this young kid. What's he thinking? So he gave me stuff to do. You got to write the Constitution. You got to do this. I write the Constitution. Okay, then, you got to change this. Every day I went, After a month of that, he finally said yes. And he gave me this little room next to the girls' locker room. Normally it's like a P building, and you have boys' locker room on one side and girls' locker on the other side, right? So he gave me this one little room. It's kind of like a storage room, right? So he didn't think much of it. Well, I advertised the club, whatever it is, right? And the first day of class, I had over 100 kids.
Wow. Yo, is this in the 70s or is this the 80s now?
This is 70. No, this is like 80 because
Okay.
I graduated in 83.
At this time, were you a fan of Bruce Lee? Was Bruce Lee in the culture? Did you watch the movies back then?
Yeah, I can't get away from the guy because my name is Lee, right?
You were back then. You were known as Henry Lee.
From the first time I was in elementary school, when I was 9, they used to come and say, "Hey, you related to Bruce Lee?" I'm like, and I'm like, do you realize how many Lees? And Lee's probably the most popular naming type. But what did they know, right? But the funny thing was, I didn't know what Bruce Lee was.
Oh.
And interestingly enough, at that time, right, Bruce Lee was not popular in the Far East. We didn't know who he was. In America, he was big. In Asia, he didn't get there yet.
Wow.
So I had no idea who the heck they were talking about. Then, of course, I looked into it and I found out who he was. But yeah.
So 100 kids show up to your trainings, and you're already on your mission, fulfilling your purpose, continuing this legacy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't teach in there. No, it would fit only 10, 20 kids. So I took them out in the football field. And that gained more popularity. And anyways, in high school, we ended up doing like lunch, demonstrations or snack. They give us a little time to do demos for promotion. And I ended up actually getting a full assembly. So think about, right, high school, all right, junior, senior year, okay? I have the entire school and the faculty have to come and watch me. Mandatory assembly. They have to come and watch me for an hour, perform for an hour every year. And then, when I went to college, I went back to do the assembly. So that started, my Hwarang Do journey. And then when I went to college, I went to USC. I was a Trojan.
You explained karate as the art of no hands. Hwarang Do does use weapons. You have swords. What other weapons do you use?
Yeah, Hwarang Do means the way of the flowering manhood or flowering knights. And it's a warrior art. So, see, you have to look at different, I like to explain the different classification, of martial art, right?
Yeah.
There's a warrior, the warrior concept, the warrior art, and then there is the sport, application. That's where you have the taekwondo, kickboxing, judo,
Now jiu-jitsu is so popular.
Right, jiu-jitsu, BJJ, MMA, all that stuff. And then you have the self-defense, aspect of it, like Krav Maga, and many just focus on just self-defense. So there's different categories of martial arts. So Hwarang Do is a warrior art. So we have all the elements of sport, of self-defense, military combatives, and so forth. It's all inclusive. So Hwarang Do is very multifaceted in that way. So it's divided into 4 categories of study, right? Shingong, developing mental power, Negong, internal power, Wegong, external power, and Mugigong, or weapon power or control of external objects. So under that roof, then that umbrella, we are basically learning the ways of to maximize, the human potential in every way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That is our objective, our goal. And before I forget, I just want to, there's so many things but I want to make sure I get this point across. We were talking about earlier about the warrior ethos, our Hwarang code, and so forth, and the value of that, and loyalty and self-sacrifice. See, the Hwarang were the smallest group, of its northern neighbor and of its western neighbor, but they were the ones who conquered. And they were the youngest warriors, right? There were stories of general of the enemy capturing the Hwarang and lifting his helmet and seeing how young he was. That he reminded of his kid, so he couldn't behead him. So he sent him back. And sending him back, he went back to have a glass of water, a cup of water, remounted his horse, and charged back in. He got captured the second time.
Yeah.
But they were able to do that. Because of the code, because of self-sacrifice, because much like what you have today in the elite forces, in the elite special forces, as well as stories of like Sparta, right?
Yes.
Of the 300, which was a true historical event, right? Where 300 Spartans defended against hundreds of thousands. They say million, but I don't know, incredible numbers. Why were they able to do that? Because their life was not important. It was the life of the person next to them.
Of their brothers, because of the brotherhood.
Yes, because the person I'm getting just, chills just thinking that idea, right? They loved their brother that much and their life was far greater, more valuable, important to them than their own, is the reason why such a small number, such a small group was able to conquer such huge, formidable opponent and armies and enemies. That's
amazing.
And that's the reason, these are the ideals. Why I do what I do, I still do what I do, and I will continue to do it, because that is so valuable to preserve in our society, not just for today, but for posterity
and for generations to come. And this fourth law, really, of no retreat, but then also of mercy. It's interesting. How would the mercy for your enemies also apply to this code?
The fourth code, before we get to that last, fourth code is it's never to retreat in face of the enemy. But actually what that is if you go to battle, you don't return if you don't win. There is no, you go to battle, you lose, you die. You cannot return. There's a famous story, Hwarang story. There are many stories like this, of a soldier, a Hwarang, a knight, returning after he's lost, but his father is the great general Kim Yu-shin, who was the main general, the person who led the unification wars and united all of Korea. He's the most famous historical figure in our Korean history, one of the most. Without him, there wouldn't be no Korea that we have today. Anyway, and he was then, his father asked the king to behead him, and his father, because he returned and they lost. But he didn't return. It was all the people around him that said, "Oh no, you gotta." Who saved him? He wanted to go and fight till he dies, but they brought him back. And in confronting the king, he asked the king to behead him. And the king said, "No, I can't. How can I do that? If I did, then I have to behead everybody." And he says, "Okay, you're the king. You can do what you want to do, but I'm the father." And he disowned him.
Oh, wow.
And the famous story is that he disowned him. He died. Is the boy's name's Wansor, the Hwarang. He came back and is thinking the mother would accept him. And the mother said, "Your father didn't accept you when he was alive. What makes you think that I would?" And he went back, and it was because of him. China was at that time mounting an invasion of the Korean Peninsula, and it was this Wansur who basically it was him who were able to lead a small group in defending the conquest of Korea. And basically he did that because he had nothing to lose. He was disowned by his family, which is the greatest shame. The greatest shame. He couldn't kill himself. That's a greater shame. He had to die in battle. So he went out to battle to die, but he wouldn't die.
He just kept fighting.
Yes, and he won.
Wow.
He won. And they asked him to come back to be, commended and be recognized. And the king invited him to, and he never showed, and we never hear from him again. With that said, we battle, we fight. I have a saying, fighters fight because they like to fight. Warriors fight because we must.
Yeah.
It's not fun to fight. It's not for leisure. It's not for fame. It's not for money. It's not a livelihood. I say to people, if you fight in the right mind, if you fight, both lose. You hurt somebody, you lose. You get hurt, you lose. You hurt somebody else, you lose. It's another human being.
Yeah.
So it is not that as a warrior, the worst type of fighting is and this is the modern warfare, right? Is how do we get the military, the army to go fight and kill? We desensitize them. We make them feel as though the enemy is less human. Mm-hmm. This is the exact thing what happened in the Holocaust, what the Germans and what the Nazis, what they have done. They're less human. They're not human. So it was easier for them to kill. See, the way of a warrior is not that. They're not killing because they're less human. They're only fighting to defend, right? And fighting in order to protect their land, their king, and their family. Not because they hate, not because out of hatred, anger, spite. No. So, of course, you show mercy in killing, compassion in killing, right? Because you're not there to just kill, you're there to defend. So when you don't have to, you don't. It's only because you have to, and you're doing it out of service. It is your service. Warriors, you basically live to die for others. Right. You live to die for others. I say the idea of the alpha male, right? I tell, if you see in a lion, pride, in the pride, right? The male lion, there's one, right? And he sleeps all day. Mm-hmm. He doesn't do crap. He sleeps all day. All the lioness, female lions, they do the hunting, they go, they bring. He eats first, right? And then they eat. Okay. So you're thinking, the lioness. Why do you think they're doing that? They think because, you know what? Because, we're subjugated, we're oppressed. This is sexist. No. Why do they do that? Because when the pride is attacked, it's the lion, it's him who has to go ahead and fight and die for the pride.
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
He's the one. Basically, he's the sacrificial lamb.
The ultimate sacrifice
For the group. Okay?
Yeah, to preserve the bloodline.
So, so that's why, they feed them whatever it is, I say this, and I don't know if this will be used, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for it, but hey, it's what it is. A woman will die for nobody. A man looks for a reason or a cause to die.
Yeah.
A woman will die for nobody except their own children. Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. Okay? We'll just go, we go look for anything to die for.
Yeah, cause. Do you feel like in our modern world we've lost the warrior way? I mean, we're fighting wars with remote control, predator drones. It's like a video game of killing, and we are so disconnected. We're disconnected in many ways, but in terms of the warrior way, we're disconnected from the sense of honor and from the sense of mercy.
Yeah, of course, and we're going to lose it more and more. Of course, I've never been, of course, who has, right, in modern era, who really have seen, hand-to-hand combat close in, but we've been there in fighting, in sparring, daily. And it's a whole another thing, right? I mean, this is why, like, everybody carries a knife, right? And it's very interesting. I go ahead and I've been teaching a long time now. It's almost 40, going on 46, 48 years, right? Almost 50 years. And so interesting that everybody's interested in, like, knife fighting, right? Knife fighting, knife defense, knife fighting. And you have to think about, or sword fighting and things of that nature. How many times in modern time do you actually get into a knife fight or a sword fight?
Never.
And even in military, right? They talk about sentry removal, and you don't get into a knife fight. You rarely ever pull out your knife, right? You pull it out to go ahead and survive. For in the jungle, you cut trees and firewood or do whatever, but you're not going to use it to fight anybody. And they talk about sentry removal, removing sentries. And it's all fantasy. And they take a gun with a silencer and why would you go, or knife throwing, right? These are not practical things, right? But we're so interested in it. And I bring this, one of the scenes that's really defining, that really, I think, that does this really well is in the movie Saving Private Ryan. Mm. And there's that one scene in there, when, he's, the American soldier, I don't remember what actor that was, but he's in there with the German soldier, and they get in a scuffle hand to hand, and they're knife fighting, and they're, driving the knife into the throat, and you see the tension. Wow, think about it. And then, it's that close, and then you're driving that knife in slowly into the, wow, man, that really captures that moment. We're human, mm-hmm. And there is no way, unless you're sociopathic and psychotic and completely disconnected, that can you kill another person looking eye to eye, in that way. This is why, like, even, Miyamoto Musashi, who's I don't know if you ever heard.
Book of Five Rings.
Yes. He's the most famous samurai.
Yeah.
And supposedly he had over 100 duels, right? Think about it.
And never lost.
Well, he'd be dead, So this is over 100 duels. Okay? That means he killed.
Close up.
Right? Over 100 people.
Yeah.
To finally realize they don't got to kill anymore. Right? To finally get it out of system to say, you know what? I'm not going to do it anymore. And retreated as a pretty much a farmer, never raising sword again. And he made little statuettes of all the samurais he dueled.
Wow.
And he put it as a shrine and prayed for them.
Wow.
Right? And one of the Book of Five Rings, the idea, right? What does it say? One of the things in there, right? Treat your opponent, your enemy, like a guest in your home. Because we're fellow warriors.
Wow. Yeah, and you pray for them. You pray for them to show up strong, so they show up at their best to give you.
Yes, and after they're dead, he's praying for them.
Yeah.
But think about, that's to live with that, right? And there is that he's fighting that guilt, that thing of taking life. But the thing is that why he's able to have some redemption and is able to carry on is because these are all warriors who chose to be there, right? It was the way they tested each other to, our sense of manner to see who is truly best, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is the other component of it that really, I think, brings about many of the dissatisfaction and the unhappiness for many of the men. Yeah.
In the samurai way, it's not only the fighting, the swordsmanship. There's also an element of poetry, of writing in script, of being a musician. There's an artistry that goes hand in hand with the warrior path. Is there anything like that in the Hwarang way? Is there an element of the artistry that's also embedded in a culture?
Well, it's there in our name.
Yes.
It's in there in our name. It's the flowering man. It's the Chinese character. These are old. So one thing you have to understand is that most of Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and even some of the other small Southeast Asia, use Chinese characters. Okay, they just pronounce it differently, but they all written form is Chinese character. So mainly China, Japan, and Korea all use Chinese character. So in the Chinese character is an ideogram, right? One word. It's not an alphabet, right? So one word is a symbol, and that symbol means many things. It symbolizes many ideas, concepts, sounds. It is used for just sound now in China, but the character has meaning. So it's the character of a flower, and it's a character of a man. And Do or Tao is where the Taoism comes from. Is the road of is a symbol of a country road. Is Tao. So Hwarang. So many of the Japanese tease the Hwarang, our history, flower men, because their character today, the flower, they use it for prostitute. So they're saying, they're male prostitutes or Hwarang, But actually, no, because the state religion at the time was Buddhism. And it was very heavily influenced by Buddhism. And it was the idea of flowering, the idea of enlightenment coming into being, right? So it had many of those aspects. And the Hwarang were actually, after they did their military service, They became statesmen. Then after statesmen, they became bodhisattva. They became Buddhist priests who went in search of enlightenment. And actually, there are many stories of the Hwarang who made pilgrimage back to India. And so you'll see, actually, there's like a Byzantine tomb with Hwarang in the procession of the funeral of the king. And how do you know that? Because the Hwarang wore on their headband 2 peacock feathers. And they were painted with these 2 peacock feathers. Yes, so the Hwarang were also the first ones to create the first stylized form of poetry called the hyanga, which is like the haiku later on in Japan. But they wrote poems.
Was it similar in terms of like the 3 stanzas, the syllables, short poems?
Short poems, yeah, short poems. They, I think, consisted of like 8 lines.
Have you ever written any of these?
Well, you know, I dabble in some poetry. I write monthly now an article on Budo International. The point is that the idea of beauty, right? The idea of beauty is aesthetics. And aesthetics is understanding form, structure, in some way, the idea of perfection. You know, beauty equates with perfection, aspiration of perfection. So the Hwarang, you see, our quest, even then and still today, it is the constant quest for human perfection. Then that requires you to understand aesthetics of beauty, you know. So I have a saying that I tell to my students, you know, that our goal is to be strong without force and to be beautiful without effort. That's the goal, right? By mere presence, by your mere existence. And that's the whole point, what I also talk about Musashi, right? Or many of the people who fight, many of the, you know, fighters who fight or whatever, or the reason why men fight. And this kind of comes around to what I said earlier about competitiveness and why I think, you know, one of the things that drives men, the testosterone, what makes us men is our competitiveness, you know, our fierceness, and what's negative about that is that you can't help but to compare yourself to other people. You know, being competitive means that you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. See, and when you're constantly comparing to other people, you're trying to see who's better, who's the whatever. And when you're not meeting up to those expectations, or you're not, you know, then you collapse. You know, you either are high performing, or if that is the source that defines you as an individual, your identity, and when that no longer exists, then you implode. You then fall, collapse internally, right? In your self-doubt, your depression, your self-loathing, suicidal, you know, all those things, pity, self-pity, all those come, you know, and then that leads to addiction, that leads to, you know. So it's such a, you know, important, you know, balance of how to fuel that competitiveness, the drive, at the same time, how to balance that with some sense of peace and calmness. See, this is what I mean by also Musashi is, look, you know, he had to have been really, really, really insecure in tremendous doubt. He had to kill 100 people, win 100 duels to realize, you know what? I don't need to fight anymore. is my point. And you can look at him to say, yeah, he's the greatest samurai and the greatest duelist in history. Yes. But in another way, you got to go, wait a minute.
He's a little bit crazy too. I think all the greats are. I think Michael Jordan, his competitive nature was so fierce that he was absolutely crazy, absolutely obsessed. Even the MMA fighters, when they're at the top of their game, they all speak of an obsession. It's not comfortable. It's not a place of zen. It's an absolutely obsessed person. And I see competition not as a negative thing. I think competition is a masculine love language. Like when we engage in healthy competition. And what's happening in the current generation with the disconnection is they're competing in video games. They're competing online. They're competing through social media. But that's not truly being met. It's not truly being tested. And without a real test from another human being, eye to eye, face to face, we don't get to be strong without force. We don't get to be beautiful without effort. In fact, it's the opposite. We're forcing and we're enacting so much effort to get something that's artificial.
Yes, it's not organic. Yeah, absolutely. So the way I like to put that, so this is what I teach my students, and we compete. We have competition. We do that. But the way I alleviate that, see that like, even when we do tournaments and they win, see, they're not allowed to parade around even if they win. So when they win, they can't jump around. They can't, no. They have to actually show greater humility when they win. And my point is that you're not fighting against anyone because they're all your brothers, because we consider ourselves a big family. So you cannot desire or want to harm, demean, or disrespect or humiliate somebody else. So what is the goal then? The goal is for you to be at your best, to push others to be better. And your goal is to do your best. So not to be better than the other person. But the question you have to ask after, the tournament, after the competition, the question you have to ask yourself, whether you medal or not, whether you place or not, right, is did I do my best? Or did I cower to fear? Did I succumb to it? To self-doubt? Or did I step up and was I courageous? Did I do my best? That's the question. If you could answer that, see, then that's the win. Then that's the exercise. You see, that's to me, that is how, for me, my organization, okay, it's not, we've been around since 1960. We're the oldest modern Korean intact martial art, but we're the smallest.
This still remains to be true. It's a part of the legacy. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, because we have, our intention is the cohesion. It's the bond, right?
Right.
And that cannot be broken. That is what you're cultivating, right? So we can't, this is why we can't ever we don't do full contact. This is semi-contact, light contact to semi-contact, because the idea of full contact is that you have to harm, injure, incapacitate your opponent.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it doesn't matter what you do in a gym, like you go if you do an MMA gym or boxing gym. If a new guy comes in, what you're doing is basically you're measuring, okay, who's the tough guy? Is he tough? You're just measuring each other up because eventually you're going to have to fight that guy, right? That's not conducive to having a cohesive, familial bond, right? So we don't have that. And it's worked. That's worked for us. So, and then it helps each individual remains humble, and also they excel in their competition. They progress organically, right? It's not so much they want to be better, okay? Is they want to be at their best, and that the goal is helping their brother. So that concept itself, has really worked for me. And that's why you see the trophies behind me. These are team trophies.
Oh, was there a moment for you, either as a teacher, a leader, a coach, or in competition yourself as a warrior, as a fighter, where you came out and unequivocally you thought to yourself that I gave my absolute best. I arrived at my best.
I think that's just the way I approach everything. You know, I don't know how to do it any other way. It's interesting that my one of my students, you know, he's now instructor in Poland, and he was a pretty macho guy, right? Very physical. Anyway, I invited him over for dinner one time. You know, we had a group dinner with everybody, and he had the dinner, and he says, he says he understands. You know, it's like, yeah, you do everything best, even cooking. And the reason I say that, it's not that I'm doing it, you know, best, but the thing is that everything you do it best. What other way can you do it? How can you do something 80%? How can you do something, you know, no matter what it is you're doing? You know, I'm renovating my place right now, and it's a really huge undertaking, one of the biggest undertaking I ever took in my life. But even when I try to do my best and give everything, it never turns out, you know, the way you want it. You know, and that's what I really like, the biggest lesson, at my age that I've learned too, right? I've lived my life trying to accomplish so many things, so many goals, so many ambitions, and achieve so many dreams, and etc. You know, and what I realize is that nothing ever turns out the way you want it. Nothing. Nothing. But that's not because you never try. Even when you try 100%, and people say 110%, even if there was such a thing, to do it at that effort, still will not turn out the way you want it. You know, and doing that with everything in my life for the last 50 years, I'm hitting 60 this year. But when I turned 50, that realization is what made me humble, is what God did to me for 50 years to humble me, to surrender to him. So I was very stubborn, right? I tell people all the time, you know, yes, because 50 years I was stubborn.
Maybe you didn't have to kill 100 enemies, but over 50 years doing your best, giving your all.
And at the end of that 50 years, being miserable. You know, because you tried your 110%. You gave it all.
In terms of the idea of what it is to be a man, it is a beautiful burden.
It's a burden. Exactly. And this is what I mean. Everybody has to go through that. Yeah. You know, you got to exhaust yourself in all your pride and ego and ambition, thinking that you can change the world. You know, my first comment when people ask me, when my friends ask me in high school, right, what is your goal? I said, world conquest. Unequivocally, you know, looking them dead in the eye, I was dead serious, right? I was relentless. In college, I didn't sleep. Eating and sleeping were two things I hated doing, you know, because it wasted time. And now I love those things, you know, but you have to do it. You have to exhaust that to truly understand humility. And this is why I say one of the things, the clips I made, whatever, and I say one of the biggest lessons, the biggest benefit of martial arts is humility. But in fact, it's not just martial art, it's life. It's God. At the end of the day, the biggest lesson in life is humility, right? But you'll never, ever get there if you think in your mind, oh, you know, I could have done it. I could have done it, right? You know, I could still do it. I could, if I did it like this, I would have done it. See, you have to exhaust that.
Yeah.
Right? You have to exhaust it. And that's just been the way I was raised and the way I've been. Even in all my relationships, I've been that way, meaning I have to try to do everything I can to make it work.
Yes.
And if I did everything I could to make it work and it doesn't, then I'm satisfied. Then I can live with myself. But if I know that I didn't, if there was a little bit that I could have and I didn't, that's what would eat me up.
And is that some of the source of that misery, is like maybe knowing that there was more?
It's the source of the misery was, and this is the other thing that I think really in today, it's really poisons us, right? And really messes us up. Another very important lesson to know. You're not supposed to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And I never, and this is what also dumbfounded me, and also I didn't like about people, or I didn't know for myself either, because I didn't know for myself. And that was when you ask people, what do you want? What do you want in life? And they go, I want to be happy. And you go, what is that? They can't answer you, right? And you can't answer. You can't define happiness. See, happiness is not something to strive for. To me, the happiness is a result, a product of living life right. Happiness is a product of doing something right. Right? So you can't, you're that's the whole idea, right? You can't take a shortcut to getting happiness. And that's the whole idea of drugs and hedonism, pleasures. Pleasure is a temporary sense of happiness. Ecstasy, pleasure, right? But it doesn't last.
And there's a cost on the other side.
Absolutely. Because it's not organic. So, but that's the thing that you're looking, right? You're looking, why aren't I happy? I've done all these things. Why aren't I happy? Why am I not satisfied? Why? And people say this all the time. I read so many testimonies and I heard so many testimonies. And that's true. There's something empty. You still feel emptiness, You have everything around you. You have success. You have notoriety, right? You have everything, but you feel empty, right? And you filled with different things. Last thing for me was the eros, to be honest with you, that was my last thing. It must be that which would fill me, right? Yeah. And that's what destroyed me. It destroyed me. God gave me everything in a woman that I ever, I thought I'd want. Gave me that,
And what did you do with it?
Well, I tried everything I can to keep it.
Yeah.
I was completely obsessed because this was it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. The first time in my life, I think it's the first time I've said it, and I say it in somebody else's podcast. I haven't said it even in mine. It's, I've always put Hwarang Do first. I put Hwarang Do first, then my family, then any of my romantic or other relationships, friends, everything else. Because I didn't have God then either, right? And I put my romantic, the woman, first time I put her first, and it destroyed me. And that was the last, the straw that broke the camel's back. God gave me the last thing. Here, this is what you want? Here, right?
The ultimate, and that's the ultimate humbling.
So I.
Can I ask you, what did you learn? What did you learn from that experience? And I'm framing it in my mind, the loss of love, the loss of ideal love. Let me ask it in this way. This might be helpful. For a brother or sister out there whose heart is absolutely shattered, who's dealing with heartbreak, who is absolutely humbled in their own experience, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, love God first.
There you go.
I mean, it's simple. That's the lesson. That's the lesson. Love God first. See, and that's the whole idea of not putting anything, any idol before God. That's where you fail. That's why we all fail. And that's why most people, whatever great achievements, every hedonist, whatever it is, at their deathbed, comes to some realization of humility, and regret. And that is not putting God first. That was my sin. And that is the greatest sin, is pride. Pride. Thinking you can do it. Thinking you have all the answers. Thinking you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you don't. You don't. And this is the reason why competitiveness or winning poisons us. See, success poisons us. Because there's no way a person who's successful, who's making lots of money, who's wealthy, and thinking, oh, I'm not worth it. I don't deserve it. Of course I deserve it. And if there were any sense of, I'm not going to say religious, because it's not about religion. It's not being religious, because I'm not absolutely religious at all.
Right. It's a spiritual connection.
It's truth. It's truth with a capital T.
Yes.
Right? It's coming to the truth, understanding the truth. It's realizing that. That is the most important thing, because if you don't, you start to think, I'm good, and I'm better than, and I deserve it. I do this. And you start to think of yourself as being so grand, so whatever. And this is all, that's the issue. You did everything. I did this. I did that. Right? That's the problem. That's the problem. And what success does.
And every man has to find that out for himself.
Yes. And that's exactly you can't tell that. You can't tell. You can't. And this is the same thing. Why, right? This is the same. Why, right? Some of my best friends, right? I had to first fight them.
Yeah.
I mean, my father, same. He doesn't have that many friends, but many of the friends are the ones who beat up. This way, how men, we have those, we think we know, and we got to go to that, to realize. And our Korean culture is this way. It's very funny. In Korea, there's age is so important, right? So anybody who's older than you, you have to call them hyung or big brother. You can't call them by name. You have to call them by title, and their title is big brother, right? Well, if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to call whatever, then you fight, right? You fight and you win. Even if you're younger, now the older one has to call you big brother.
Wow.
So it's kind of like the uncle thing, right? In the US. But in Korea, that's the way it is. So my father has many friends that way that call him, big brother, and so have I. So that's a very interesting thing, right? That's very interesting. We have to do that. That's our male, that's the nature of being a man.
The respect for elders, that's similar in Japan as well. There's culturally, you have to respect, even if they're 1 day older, 1 year older. You have to have that respect. But I like this concept that if you don't want to do it, that you can fight for it. It's a
really today, it's a crisis. And I see what you guys are doing, and you guys, it seems like it's the result of the crisis in our males today.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Where's the identity? Where are the role models? Where, and you call masculinity toxic. I mean, how is it toxic? These kind of negative terms that we put on being a man, when men say to each other, be a man or man up, what that means, that's a big burden.
Right.
That has nothing to do with privilege. It has everything to do with do more, be better, sacrifice more, suck it up, it's really twisted how things have turned out. And I applaud you guys. And I really hope that more and more people realize the value of how to sustain. There is negative. Yes, absolutely. Right? Negative,
There's negative behavior for sure.
But negative behavior in anything.
Right. Not just masculinity. As a human, there's negative behavior patterns that we get to look at and we get to address. And, Sacred Sons, we are not a legacy of martial artists, but we are a legacy of relational arts. We are called to bring connection, confrontation, and celebration back into the hearts of men. And that's what we do on our weekends. We're initiating men into a legacy of men's work where we really get to look eye to eye. Sometimes we put on the gloves and we spar, but it's a tool that we use to get to the deeper inner workings of a man. And in that way, this piece that you brought through, the legacy of loyalty, I really have a lot of respect for that because I know how challenging that can be when there's so much betrayal, when there's so much propensity for gossip or, going around. And so I really honor you for continuing that legacy of loyalty. And if you had one piece of advice for someone who is trying to cultivate so-called brotherhood, what would that be? And I'm saying it because it's not easy.
I have to go back to love God.
That's good.
No, because you have to do that because you have to forgive. Everybody's going to fail you. But the thing is, you're going to fail yourself. So first, the forgiveness, you have to start with you. And I think that's one of the many reasons why people who are struggling, right? People who are insecure, people who are unstable or trying to look for something, but lost. They hide that and they're very critical of other people. Judgmental and critical of other people because they're busy trying to determine who's going to hurt them, who's going to take advantage of them, and not first accepting and realizing that they have to strengthen themselves, that they have betrayed themselves, that they have to forgive themselves. They have to, like you said, love yourself, which we take it for granted. It should be a normal thing, but in today's society,
it's not.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, we have our own code. We call it agreements, but it's confidentiality, honesty, acceptance, ownership, and the sacred. And the piece of acceptance and non-judgment, it's not just for others, it's for ourselves as well. Like most people find it pretty easily, especially in our circles, to stop judging other people. The one that's the toughest is the self, to stop criticizing that inner voice, that inner critic that comes online for so many. That's the one that often is hardest to forgive.
Christ puts it in the best way, right? He says, take the log out of your eye before you judge another, right? He says, take the log, not a stick, but a log in your eye. Take it out before you can judge others to see clearly. I have a thing about that too, and that is yes, acceptance is very important. Not judging others, very important. And many people just take that part of it and then say, love everybody, don't judge, and I want to just add something to that, right? That's not all of it.
Right.
Because the idea of love and care about something, if you feel somebody is doing wrong and they're bringing harm to yourself and others, you have to tell them. If they're doing some negative behavior, self-destructive behavior, something that's negative, You have to tell them. That primarily for me, as a teacher, as a martial arts teacher, my single most important job is to identify their weaknesses and have them confronted. My job is to critique them on what they do wrong. They have to grow a thick skin. That's another huge important thing. And you have to be able to take it. The single most important thing I have to be able to say to myself to sleep at night, whatever discipline I give other people, as I say, if you have self-discipline, you don't need others to discipline you. But if you don't have self-discipline, then you're going to get disciplined. And so majority of my job is disciplining other people. Is I have to say to myself, did I do it for their best interest? Right? Did I discipline them for their best interest? Meaning, did I do it because I love them? And I think as a parent too, that's the biggest question they have to ask themselves, right? So letting a child just do whatever they want, you can't do that. That's not parenting, right? Parents must take the time to teach their children what not to do. That's more important, right? Teaching them the desire to do something and be ambitious and courageous and be enthusiastic. That's not, more importantly, you have to teach them restraint.
Yeah.
Restraint, right? And that's the unpleasant job. I teach every Saturday and I have a group online and also, present, right? And I jokingly said, oh yeah, I know you guys, all you guys, none of you guys that really like me, you wouldn't want to invite me to your to a slumber party. And nobody denied it. I was expecting, oh no, sir, we like you. But it's true.
That's another one of the costs. You have to give up the idea of being liked.
Exactly. And how can you, today, that's what our society has contaminated us with.
Right.
The likes, the thumbs up,
yeah.
Right? To
There it is.
truly do things, to truly, right, to live happily and to do right. Yeah. You have to accept not being liked. That's not the goal of living.
So I'm a father. I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. Are you a father? I didn't ask you that.
It's so funny, right? I wanted 10 kids when I was in high school. I want to marry and have 10 kids. That's another long story. But no, I haven't married yet.
So not yet. It could still happen.
Well, I'm hoping.
You have maybe no children, but you have so many students. You have so many children in the form of your students. But what I wanted to say is, as a father of 3 boys,
Yeah.
the idea of discipline has transformed for me, because as much as it is about disciplining the child, it actually is for me about having discipline, having my own impulse control before I subjugate someone else to say, you have to have impulse control. Because if my impulse is to be too commanding or go into anger, then I'm actually not displaying the thing that I'm trying to teach. And so it's like the discipline goes both ways, as you mentioned. It's discipline the other through self-discipline.
Self-discipline, yes. How can you teach discipline if you don't have self-discipline? You're not teaching discipline. So the hardest ways of leadership is leading by example.
Yeah.
And that's what we're about.
And that comes through consistency. Through the consistency, it's a daily fight, for lack of a better term. Yes, because we struggle internally.
Everybody says, follow your heart, do what your heart tells you. You know what? Your heart is evil. Your heart is wicked. Okay? Even Freud identified that. Yeah, it's the id. The id is primitive. It's savage. Okay? In the spiritual term, that's where the demon, the devil lies, is in your heart, your feelings.
That's an important piece to discern from the ego, versus the capital T truth.
Right. But that's the whole thing. You just said it right there too, right? Consistency, right? Yeah. What person can we place as a role model who's always consistent, who never falters, who never fails, who never does wrong? Nobody. See, this is what many of us do, and many men and women alike, right? There's many women who date strong men and destroy them, right? Because they just punch holes in their strength, in their weak, and everybody has holes. Everybody's weak, and this is another reason many of us turn, narcissistic, secular, and because everybody's corrupt, right? Everybody's a liar. Everybody is imperfect. Okay, so I'm not going to listen to anybody. Yeah, that's true. That can be true. But the thing is, if what it is that your ego is so, and narcissism is so great, what's important is not the truth, but what is important is that you're right. Okay? So if you want to be right, then just bet against everybody. Yeah. If you want to be right, just say, oh yeah, that person says he's going to do whatever. No, you're not. You're going to fail. You can't do it. Right? If someone says, I'm so-and-so, I'm going to, whatever, and say, no, right? And expect them to make a mistake. And when they do, point it out. And you'll be right. Right? You'll be right. You'll be right. All right?
And you'll be unhappy.
Exactly.
Or, you know what I mean? Or unfulfilled. One or the other. Well,
they will be unhappy, very lonely, but they're happy with themselves because they're right.
Yeah, what a trap that is.
Oh, yeah, isn't it? It's horrible. But many people justify their actions in ways of judgment and living their life because that's their code, protect themselves. When the self becomes the idol, the God, then that's what happens.
Yeah. First commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's a theme of this place that you have arrived. Grand Master Taejoon Lee, it's been an honor to hear you and to be with you today. What are you currently working on? What are you building in this world? You have students all around the world, and I wanted to say this. Maybe you didn't change the world, but you have changed many worlds through the lenses of your students and of the folks who follow you. So what are you building today, and how can our listeners stay connected with you? Yeah, so I try to say now, it's about not changing the world, and because that in itself is very narcissistic and sociopathic, that one person could change the world. So now that it's changed to empowering the world one person at a time. There it is. That is my aim, to empower just one person at a time. And in doing that, once again, I used to have huge ambitions and goals and whatever, but I just take it one step and one day at a time. And what God has given me is an opportunity now is to build my home here in northern Luxembourg. I bought a very old over 100-year-old farmhouse and converting it to my home and a live-in training center, Hwa Rang Do sanctuary, so people can come and stay and learn. And my goal is to teach instructors and open other areas and other places in the world. And I'm blessed. I have a Instagram account, Hwarang Quest, and that has kind of got some attraction. So I'm going to continually building that out, and I will be launching hwarangquest.com, which will have digital content for instruction, not only in martial arts training, but in wellness, in empowerment. I do some life coaching type of work too, for non-students to the public as well. Great.
So that's it. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to have me on. I really appreciate that, and I wish you guys in your efforts the best. God bless all of you, and of course, I'd like to thank Rick, my student, for hooking this up. He's a for me, he's a boy. He's now good young man, and he's really. I met him when I was there. He just called me out of the blue. And wanted to talk to me, and he had some revelations, and I'm glad. And I told him that it's great. What makes me happy is that he's seeking, and I think if I can leave with that one thing is that we should never stop seeking, and if you seek, you shall find, and if you knock, the door shall open.
Beautiful. Shout out to Rick Robbins. Rick is our director of marketing at Sacred Sons. And yes, he had a vision of us connecting and speaking. And I'm sure our audience is going to go check out the Hwarang Quest. And, with the wellness skills, with the coaching, and with the wisdom that you've acquired, maybe there will be future collaboration. I'd love to have you come speak to some of our men. And we're in Europe as well, so there'll be opportunity for collaboration.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay.
I look forward to it.
With that, Grand Master Taejoon Lee. And I wanted to say this, and I want to be humble and also daring in saying this, that your ancestors are proud of what you have created. Like, for you to continue this legacy, we talk about purpose all the time, and you're someone who has really committed to the path of their purpose, and I truly see that. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yes. With that, Grand Master Taejoon Lee, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.